We are live.
Good morning. This is the Social Services Committee of Wednesday, April the 10th, 2024. The roll call has been taken by the clerk. We are missing two councillors at the moment, Councillor Sikoli, who we think will turn up, and Councillor Garneau, who has sent her apologies. I understand that Councillor Howes will be with us until about 10 and then disappear for 10 minutes or half an hour and come back after that. Are there any declarations of conflicts of interest for any items appearing on the agenda? Seeing none, thank you. At this time, I will ask members if there are any items the committee wishes to separate for discussion purposes. Item 5.1 is already separated as we have a presentation. Councillor Miller first.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 5.2, please.
Thank you. Councillor Howes? You are muted.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Chair. The report on the Local Housing Corporation 2024-149, please. And if I'm not here, if that happens to come up during my absence, I think Lucas may have some questions in my place. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Got that. Councillor Oakley. You're still very quiet.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay, perfect. Can we also separate 6.2, please? Thank you.
Any other requests? Seeing none, then can I please get a mover and a seconder to place all items for consideration / consent onto the floor? Councillor Martin and Councillor Samwell. Thank you. Christine, can we please call the vote on all items not separated, reading the titles that are subject to the vote?
The items that are subject to the vote are item 5.3, Social Services Report Schedule 2024, item 6.1, Financial Funding Sources for Housing Stability Programs, and item 6.3, the minutes from March 6th. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you.
Moving on to presentations and delegations. We have no registered delegations today, but we do have one presentation. Rosemary Whitehouse, Senior Project Manager for Program Expansion and Accountability, and Sarah Kaczynski, Senior Project Manager for Systems Transformation and Evaluation. I'm going to ask Rosemary and Sarah to come forward to provide a presentation regarding item 4.2.1, Building Our Community from the Kids Up, a 2024 update. Rosemary and Sarah, you have 10 minutes to present, and questions will be held until the item is on the floor during the debate portion of the meeting. Welcome.
Through the chair, good morning. My name is Rosemary Whitehouse. I'm the Senior Project Manager, Program Expansion and Accountability with the Children's Services and Early Years team.
And my name is Sarah Kaczynski. I'm a Senior Project Manager, System Transformation and Evaluation with the Children's Services and Early Years program team.
Quality childcare and early learning programs play a key role in the well-being of children and families, as well as the economic prosperity of a community. Accessible, affordable, quality childcare supports families, particularly women, in participating in the workforce or attending school, helping to reduce gender-based income and employment inequalities. By attending childcare and early learning programs, children can improve their language and cognitive development, becoming better prepared to start school, leading to higher academic achievement later in life. Childcare and early learning programs are the building blocks for the future of our community, thus the name of our 10-year plan. The 2024 update to Building Our Community from the Kids Up provides an annual update of the work being done by the Children's Services and Early Years Division. Highlights from 2023 include 66 new 0 to 12 childcare spaces in 2023 and 232 new 0 to 5 childcare spaces already approved for 2024. Early on attendance returning to nearly pre-COVID levels with over 25,000 child visits. Launch of Indigenous-led early on programming at sport and recreation centers. development of a comprehensive access and inclusion framework, local champions award for the Build Belonging project, launch of a mental health capacity building project, launch of the new Early On at TF Warren Community Center in Canesville. Given our limited time today, this morning we will be focusing our presentation on our implementation of the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Program, also known as the $10 a day or CWELC. This map highlights licensed childcare center locations in the city and the county. Licensed childcare includes center-based programs identified in green, before and after school programs in yellow, and licensed home childcare sites in purple as of December 31st, 2023. There are currently 4,506 spaces ages 0 to 12 in our community, with 71% of the spaces in the city and 29% of spaces in the county. This provides us with an access ratio of 1 licensed space for every 5 children. Demand for licensed care exceeds spaces. This waitlist graph illustrates the change in waitlist over the past few years. The number of children on the waitlist dropped in 2020 due to the pandemic and increased each year since. We suspect that a major portion of the approximately 40% increase in 2022 may be attributed to the $10 a day childcare announcement. If so, it's possible some of these children were or are in private or unlicensed childcare, and their parents are migrating to the licensed childcare system to take advantage of the lower fees. CWELC pertains to spaces for children 0 to 5, which includes full-day childcare for children 0 to 4 and licensed before and after programs for children ages 4 to 5. Locally, 55 out of the 57 childcare licensees, including licensed home childcare, have opted in, which represents 2,855 age 0 to 5 childcare spaces, or 95% of all spaces for this age group. CWELC focuses on 4 pillars: growth in childcare spaces, reduction in parent fees, childcare workforce supports, and improving quality, access, and inclusion. This map illustrates our progress in growth in childcare spaces. The first map includes blue pinpoints to show new sites approved to date. The second map shows an updated map of existing sites and new approved sites. The province has allocated operating funding to support the growth of 985 CWELC funded spaces in the city and county from 2022 to 2026. Growth in 2022 and 23 was primarily in before and after JKSK programs and in previously planned expansions in local centers. Upon receipt of the growth targets in mid-2023, and in keeping with our Building Our Community from the Kids Up 10-year plan, a competitive process was completed in late 2023, and 281 full-day 0 to 5 community-based spaces for infants, toddlers, and preschoolers were approved to be open in 2024 and early 25. Additionally, there are 329 spaces being built as expansions to school-based childcares or new childcares attached to new schools. A second competitive process will open in late spring 2024 for the remaining spaces to be opened in 2025 and 26. Of note, the federal provincial CWELC agreement dictates the percentage of for-profit childcares. Locally, we have approved the maximum number of for-profit spaces. As a result, nonprofit childcare growth in locations with lower space access will be prioritized in this second competitive process. I'll now pass it along to Sarah to talk about access ratios.
The 2022 Building Our Community from the Kids Up 10-year plan identified a goal to maintain an access ratio of 1 licensed childcare space for every 5 children as the population continues to grow. With the addition of 985 new spaces funded through CWELC, we are now projecting to have a 32% access rate, or 1 in 3 ratio, by the end of 2026. We are very excited to see this kind of significant growth in the community to support families. However, we will continue to be short of the provincial goal of a common access ratio of 37%, and we anticipate that this growth will not keep up with the demand for CWELC-funded licensed childcare spaces. Staff continue to work with the ministry to increase our allocated spaces. The second and most talked about pillar of CWELC is the reduction of parent fees. As shown in the table, the average cost of licensed childcare has decreased significantly for families and is expected to decrease further by 2025. Currently, families are paying fees reduced by 52.75% from what they were paying in March 2022. Parent fees will be reduced further to an average of $10 per day by September 2025. While we haven't achieved the $10 per day average yet, you can see that families are already paying approximately $6,000 less per year per child, which is amazing for the children and families in our community. An ongoing challenge to both the creation of new spaces and filling of current spaces is the provincial childcare workforce shortage. Several provincial and local efforts seek to address these challenges, including the projects and initiatives shown on the slide, which are further detailed in the report. In addition, funding provided through CWILC aims to improve compensation for low-wage earners. The wage floor has been increased to $23.86 per hour in 2024 and will continue to increase annually until 2026. As you can see on the slide, these wage changes are resulting in significant pay increases for our local childcare workforce. The final pillar of CWELC aligns with goals set out in the Building Our Community from the Kids Up 10-year plan. Inclusion supports healthy child development, positive self-esteem, social skills, and supports the families of children with special needs. Research shows that all children benefit from inclusive childcare as it promotes respect and celebration of diversity. The images on the slide provide some examples of how access and inclusion is being implemented locally. The 1 in 3 childcare space goal discussed earlier is a key element in our strive to improve access to childcare in Brantford and the County of Brant. Other images on this slide provide examples of inclusion practices in childcare and early years programs. This includes welcoming signage and culturally relevant play materials and activities for children. We are proud to highlight that these and additional inclusion efforts made by a partnership between our Early On at St. Gabriel's Catholic Elementary School and the Brantford Immigration Partnership recently won the Local Municipal Champion Award by the Ontario Municipal Social Services Association. We'd also like to acknowledge the city's communication department for their development of the posters seen on the slide, which are displayed throughout Early Ons and on Early On social media pages. As part of our efforts to increase inclusion, an inclusion access pathway was developed in 2023 and is captured in the report as Appendix C. The pathway document was developed through consultation with local early learning and childcare providers and parents. It identifies the current status of inclusivity within our system, existing gaps and opportunities for improvement, actionable strategies and recommendations to foster a more inclusive and accessible environment for diverse children, families, and staff, and a self-assessment tool that childcare and early on providers can use to regularly evaluate and enhance inclusivity and accessibility at their sites. This document will inform inclusion efforts in our sector moving forward. That concludes today's presentation. Thank you very much for your time and attention. We are now happy to answer any questions you may have.
Rosemary, Sarah, thank you very much. The committee will now consider items that were separated for discussion purposes. Could I get a mover and seconder to place all separated items on the floor? Councillor Martin and Councillor Carpenter, thank you. Then we'll move on to item 5.1 and open up the discussion, and hopefully Rosemary and Sarah will get some questions. Would anybody like to ask a question? Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you. So this is fully funded by it's the federal government's plan for childcare is fully funded.
Through the chair, Michelle Connor, Manager of Children's Service and Early Years, the CWELC program is 100% funded through the federal and provincial agreement.
So the money goes from the feds to the province and then the province to us.
Yes.
And when you talked about allocation, what were you meaning there? Looking for more allocation?
So in order to have CWELC spaces, there's a portion of the cost for childcare that is borne by the parent. As that portion decreases, then that funding needs to come from us, which then in turn comes from the province and the federal government. So we are allocated as a CMSM to have funding for 985 new spaces beyond what we currently have. To grow beyond that, we would need a commitment for greater, it's long-term operating funding to manage those spaces.
And the 985 or more spaces, we haven't got enough capacity yet for that, right? We haven't met that number.
We're working on that. As Rosemary said, we've had one RFP go out and we are having another at the end of this spring probably. But we have grown, we have over 200, I think she said the numbers that are going to be opening this year and early next year, as well as all the school builds. And then another 280, I think, will allocate in the next RFP. So that should get us to a total of 985 new spaces by the end of 2026.
And just clarification, the $6,000 per child, is that what the parents are actually saving?
To date, once it goes down to $10 a day, they'll be saving more. That's the difference between what they were paying in March 2022 and what they're paying right now, which is about a 52.75% reduction.
So by the end of 2025, they'll be saving $6,000 per child.
They are saving $6,000 per child now. That will go up. Their savings will increase.
Or it'll
by-
increase dramatically.
And it is to be by September 2025 is what we've been told.
Okay, so that money goes directly into that family's pocket.
Yes.
For inflation and everything else.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. Wonderful report. Thank you.
Councillor House.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the staff. I appreciate the information as well, and I like Councillor Carpenter. I certainly noted the $6,000 per year saving, and I'm sure that's going to be on a lot of people's minds, and knowing that it's going to increase. Can you tell us, so at that $6,000 savings per child within our communities, how many kids is this applying to? Like how many? I was going to say families, but there'll be families with two children. So how many children are saving $6,000? Because that is a significant element for the people in our both communities.
One second. So the CWELC funded spaces, that reduction would apply to 0 to 5 spaces only. And currently we have an operating capacity of around 2,000 for that age group. So we could estimate that there's around 2,000 children who are benefiting from that in our system.
Well, that's a lot of families finding some relief in that category. So thank you.
Councillor Miller.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, I know it talks a little bit about it in the report, but I want to ask if staff could explain to us as a counselor how we would respond to parents that call us. I understand some of these after-school programs are oversubscribed. Somebody's on a wait list. How does staff prioritize who gets in next? Is it based on the fact that they may have a sibling in that program? Is it based on the fact that if it's at a school, they are attending that school? Is it based on geography? How are the wait lists prioritized for after-school programs?
Through the chair, all of the childcare and licensed childcare families apply through one list, which is a first come, first served system. But there are limited exceptions. And one of those exceptions is siblings of current children. And another of the exceptions is the children of the staff that are running the program. So if a child were to apply for a childcare and they met one of those exceptions, they would go to the top of the list. Otherwise, it's a first come, first served system.
Okay, thank you. So it's not based on geography. If somebody is anywhere within our jurisdictions, they can go to any program. Is that how that works?
Absolutely. And the one list allows parents to actually apply once through the online portal to as many childcares as they want. Some families prefer childcares that are closer to where they live. Some prefer them closer to where they work. Some of them prefer them closer to where, in-laws live, whatever, but they can apply for as many as they want. And that is our recommendation at this point in time, because the demand exceeds supply right now. We encourage families to apply to a number of childcares. They can accept the first space that they're given, and they can remain on the list for their first choice because they number their choices. And then when they get their first choice, then they can move their child if that's more appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Very informative answer.
Any other questions? If not, then I'm going to ask a question, if I may. But first of all, thank you. It's a really comprehensive report, and there's some really positive news in there, as Councillor Carpenter mentioned. I had two questions. One is, if we were to get to 37% and meet the provincial target, would we be fully funded for that?
So we have asked for additional spaces in our allocation to be able to meet that target. So if those spaces were approved, then the operational funding for that spaces would come along with it. So you approved for both the spaces to open them and then the long-term operational funding to fund those spaces at the reduced rate.
So
They would come together.
So getting to the 37% is not because we don't want to get there, it's because we're waiting for government approval to get there.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Thank you. And second thing was, how do we compare with other municipalities? Are we leading, lagging?
There is quite a range across the province of access ratios. From our understanding, they range from about 17% access, which would be lower than our 2022 rate, to upwards to 50% access. So when the provincial government determined the space allocations, they looked at where you're starting from and what would be reasonable for you to achieve in the next 4 years. So we were on the lower end of that, but by the end of the agreement with the 985 spaces, will be around 32%, which is very close to the provincial access rate that they're looking to achieve.
Thank you. And one final question. We're constantly focused here on licensed childcare spots. Have we seen any change in the numbers of non-licensed childcare providers?
There is no mechanism right now that we track unlicensed childcare providers. So we're not really privy to that information to know if that unlicensed sector has changed as a result of this. There is simply no data collection method for unlicensed childcare.
Do we have any obligations, responsibilities for seeing for non-licensed operations to ensure that indeed they are providing a safe and appropriate service?
As the city, no, we don't have an obligation to oversee that. They would be required to follow certain legislative requirements, but that would be overseen by the ministry.
Okay, thank you very much for that. One final check, no more questions? Seeing none, then I think I'll ask Kirsten to call the vote.
All those in favor of item 5.1, building our community from the Kids Up 2024 update? That carried, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Rosemary. Moving on then, Councillor Miller, I think you were the councillor that took out 5.2.
Aye, Chairman. Yes. Okay, just a few questions. The $314,140 that's now going to Grand River Estates. That's obviously going to decrease over time. Is that provincial or municipal funds? First question.
Good morning, Mary Musson, Director of Housing and Homelessness Services for the city. Through the chair, that amount is currently funded through the Provincial Homelessness Prevention Program funding, as well as it's offset by the city-county cost share.
Okay. I'm going to go back to the 2021 report from February 2021-63 because it's referenced many times since that report came out. And that original funding, it came through Community Homeless Prevention Initiative funding, CHPI. In the report from February 2021, it said that the housing with related supports mandate doesn't align with that CHPI funding, but it never said in that report why it didn't align. What didn't align with that?
So through the chair, this ties into the other report with regards to homelessness funding. So the homelessness prevention program, there are very specific program guidelines that outline how that funding stream can be used. And with the previous report that was brought forward in December of 2023 that spoke about the decision to wind down the program, staff had shown that Grand River Estates does not meet the mandate of the homelessness prevention program funding stream, which includes moving people people who are experiencing chronic and episodic homelessness into a shelter program. So technically, the homelessness prevention program is very specific to meeting people who are homeless and providing for their needs. Grand River Estates is a retirement facility, so unfortunately, their mandate does not align with the program guidelines.
Okay, and then the last question then, I'm just, through you, Mr. Chair, I'm concerned, how do we meet the needs of people who have mobility issues, have maybe dementia issues as as we have a growing population? And for whatever reason, they may be facing the homelessness. And I don't know if this is a healthcare question or a social services question, but at the end of the day, how do we, I'll take anybody if they can help me with this, and how do we provide shelter beds for those with medical needs?
So through the chair, this is a very good question. There are people who are experiencing homelessness within the hospital system who do need to be moved into appropriate accommodations. Unfortunately, if they are unable to live independently with or without supports in the community, they're not appropriate for the shelter system. So this is where it would be a Ministry of Health requirement to look at long-term care homes and other appropriate settings.
Okay, sorry, Mr. So if I hear you correctly there, Mary, what you're saying is this: if we come across those individuals, we are putting them with the Ministry of Health. They are not in social services. That's I think that's the crux of it. Is that a fair assessment of what you just said?
Through the chair, that is correct. And there is a gap and there's a big bottleneck in the healthcare system because long-term care beds are very few and scant, but unfortunately, they would not be appropriate for our homelessness system because we just do not have the medical support available.
Okay, thank you for the answers. This is a really complicated subject, and some of us are going to be faced with this with a call from somebody who can't access social services because they got health issues, but then we all know what some of the issues are with the health part of our government. So okay, I appreciate the answer. Thank you, Mary.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll ask Kristen to call the vote.
All those in favor of item 5.2, Housing Stability Services Update? Carried, thank you.
Thank you. Before I just move on to 5.4, I just wanted to say on 5.3, thanks to CAO Hutchings for bringing this report. I think it's appropriate that we understand what's going forward. Nothing to say about it, but thank you very much. Moving on to 5.4, Councillor Howes, you brought this out.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff. I read this report with some questions and some concerns. I completely understand for the city of Brantford. Administratively, it makes a lot of sense to change the structure of the ownership of this, but at first, the fact that this is a 2018 report, 6 years later, turning into action, I'm just wondering if it needs a relook from today's lens, and I'm also wondering collectively for all of us, our goal is to acquire more affordable housing for our communities. And within this report, it indicates that some of the properties within this will be converted to at market rent, which is the current social services model for properties. To me, that seems like we will be losing affordable housing units. And I also wondered if staff could clarify which properties are affected by this within the County of Brant. Thanks.
If I can, through Mr. Chair, maybe I'll go backwards for the questions. Which properties affected? The properties in the Daleview are in the LHC are Daleview Gardens in the city of Brantford, Brant Towers, city of Brantford, Eastdale Gardens on Darling Street, Northland Gardens, city of Brantford, Willow Street, which is in Paris, in the county, Lauren Towers in Brantford, Winston Court in Brantford, Sunrise Villa, which is in the county in Burford, Woodlawn Meadows, which is various addresses in Brantford, Albion Towers, Albion Street in Brantford, Trillium Way, Paris in the county, in Walker's Green and Paris, 33 Main Street and Paris. To your question about losing housing, that's not really what the report is saying. It's saying that when the LHC transferred over back in the late 90s, early 2000s, there's a stipulation for amount of RGI units in each one. We've been building housing such as Marlene Avenue and over at John Noble Home. This allows flexibility to make the mixes and all across all our units, not just in the LHC. It allows more flexibility across the units, like Trillium Way just being built and Lucy Marco being built across the streets. It allows for flexibility in the unit mixes. To the first question on 2018, this is what you're seeing, 2024-149 is current eyes. It is current. It was just written last month. The report was written in 2018. I started in 2019, and we had this thing called COVID that happened and kept my legal department awfully busy. And we've had some staffing changes in housing, and we're just getting to this now. It's been on my list for a number of years. When I worked in Niagara Region, we did the transfer, the LHC transferred over 24 hours later. It was dissolved. Most municipalities dissolve theirs immediately, and you can see that's coming in twos and fros that the city of Brantford had to go through in 2002 to an agreement between the city and the LHC. It is a corporated on the Ontario Business Corporation Act, which is a for-profit organization, which was an odd thing, and the city was transferred 100 shares at that time. So we're looking to dissolve those for all the reasons listed in the report.
Does that answer your questions, Councillor House?
It does, Mr. Chair. Just a quick follow-up, and I do understand the desire to change the ownership structure, and I don't really care about that one way or the other. But I do, when I think about the original Trillium Way building, that for roughly 40 years has delivered 50 affordable housing units to the community in Paris and surrounding areas. The idea that in the new structure that property may have some of those units turned to market rent rates it is a concern to me, as in the way I look at it, it would be a net reduction in the number of affordable housing that we're delivering to the community. So it is a concern of mine. Thank you.
Please.
So through the chair, just to clarify a bit more about the mixed income model, by dissolving the LHC, we will not be losing affordable housing units. What we will actually be gaining is increased flexibility to move people who might not meet the community housing cutoff. So that's rent geared to income, where it's based on 30% of a low income family's net household income. We will be able to offer residency to low income households who may not meet that cutoff, but still need affordable housing. So the difference between community and affordable housing, this will increase our flexibility to place people who do need affordable housing rates. So that could be as low as 80% average market rent, 100% average market rent. We would never be renting at the market rent in the local economy where we're seeing people not being able to afford 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. We would always ensure an affordable market rent rate. This would really help increase also just the well-being of people in our units. And it would also help with ensuring that people living in these buildings are not stigmatized, because currently every single person and household is an RGI tenant.
Go ahead, Councillor House.
One more follow-up, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the clarification on that. And if Mary could indulge me just a little bit more, when you say 100% market rent as an option within affordable housing, can you just clarify that to me a little bit more? So if a tenant is paying 100% market value, is that still considered affordable housing?
Through the chair, yes, it can be, because when we are looking at the average market rent for the Brantford area, then we would be looking at very low rates. And apologies, I don't have it right off the top of my head, but we're looking at roughly $1,000 to $1,100 for a one-bedroom apartment if we're charging 100% average market rent from CMHC. We would not be looking at rates that high for a lot of the units, and we would really be implementing a mixed income model, which would have a healthy mix of rent geared to income units all the way up to market rent.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Carpenter.
Yes, so could I have some kind of a guarantee that
Hello?
we will not be losing?
Yes, in about 2 minutes. I'll be right there.
Councillor Howes, can you go on mute?
Sorry. So some kind of guarantee that we're not going to lose, we're not going to drop below the current geared rent income units that we have.
Through the chair, yes, we can definitely guarantee that. According to the Housing Services Act, we have to maintain a minimum service level standard, which for us is 1,645 units. We have never dropped below that. We've always exceeded, and we have roughly 2,000 units in Brantford Brant that are rent geared to income. So we would never drop below the 1,645.
No, but all the locations that were mentioned, they are geared to rent geared income units, are they not?
They are rent geared to income. So we would.
We wouldn't be moving someone out of a geared to rent income spot without creating another one.
That is correct. We would never move someone out just to increase our revenue.
And the argument here is to get to that mix that we've supported that will increase revenue for us to put back into housing.
That is correct.
And that revenue will stay within that realm. Okay.
Yes, and to your earlier comments and direction from this committee is that mix within that you referenced personally many times, that mix within each unit, we can do that in the LHC units as well.
Now they give us an opportunity to build on the 12 acres available at John Noble for more of those homes, right? Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate that.
Any further questions? Mayor Davies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So question of staff then, if you look out over the next 5 years, we have a goal of increasing the number of units in total, some of which will be CMHC market rent, which is probably around 1/2 of what true market rent is. A large part will be the CMHC 80% or 70% as the case may be, and then you have the core of RGI, the 30% net income. So if your goal is to, let's say, increase the number of RGI units, and you want to achieve that over the next 5 years, how do you do that? I mean, I guess you could convert buildings. Instead of going with the mixed model, you go to the old 1960s model, which is every unit is RGI, and then that raises that stigma question. So if you want to avoid the stigma, have units, projects that are mixed use, mixed socioeconomic background of the tenants. How do you achieve that? The mix we're trying to aspire to, but also at the same time increase the RGI units.
So Mary and I are going to tag team this answer. So the short answer is volume and continuum. So we need more units.
That would be build, baby, build. Is that what you're saying?
I didn't say that, but that's build more volume. And also what we have to focus on, and what's Mary's now, is the service system management of people continuing through the system. They may start out at RGI, they may go to rent supplements, they may go to economic market rent, and then the market rents and through the system. And then we have some education components of buying and owning a house or moving out to the private. So there's a whole continuum that we're trying to build. So that's the volume and continuum. Mary? Anything else? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I had a couple, if I may. I take it then, if we're dissolving the LHC, that the agenda that we have before us after this meeting will come back into the social services agenda. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
But not, and this is as of December 31st, 2024. So be next year, you'll see a change. Yes.
Yeah, thank you for that. Second thing, does the the shared social services agreement with the county, is that in any way impacted by this?
The LHC is referenced in the definition, and why it's referenced in the definition of the shared service agreements, because it's referenced in the agreement that it's part of it. So this would just, we take out the definition and it would just be part of the units that are in the agreement. So it doesn't really affect it, no.
Okay. Just for my own clarity, I mean, when the handover from provincial government to municipal government took place, the city took all the housing stock. But now the shared services agreement, the county is actually a significant contributor now to housing stock going forward. So is there you used to be the 100% shareholders. Is there any change that will take now as we go forward?
That doesn't change the ownership model. What the shared service agreement calls for is any new builds that the county puts a portion into to the capital side, they would own a proportionate share of the ownership of that. If the city put in 50% and the county put in 50%, that would be the shared proportional ownership. In Trillium Way, for instance, that's being built 100% county money, it's up to 100% owned by the county. So not on the previous stock, but any new stock that's being built.
But all covered in this agenda as it comes into the social services agenda after the turn of the year.
Correct.
Thank you. Any further questions? Mayor Davies.
Yeah, following up on Mr. Chair on your question. So when we have this once a month social services meeting, it's followed by meetings of the nonprofit housing corporation. So once this is fully implemented, will it just be one meeting then? And we won't be having the meetings of various housing corporations?
You still will have, through Mr. Chair, to the mayor, you will not have the LHC anymore. You still will have the Brantford Municipal Not-for-Profit Housing Corporation. Those are owned specifically by the city of Brantford. So there still will be a separate corporation. That's the BMHC, but you will not have the LHC anymore. The one less of the three meetings, there'll be one less.
All right. And so from the portfolio that's included in the corporation that's being eliminated or merged into social services, will we at the Social Services Committee see the kind of periodic reporting that we see, you know, financial statements, rental arrear, performance metrics, that sort of thing? Will we now see that at social services?
Yes, you'll still see the same report. It'll just be amalgamated in with our other units that we have that are outside the LHC, and it's less work for Donna, who's sitting behind me. Yes.
Yeah. So why wouldn't we just do the same with the other nonprofit housing corporation?
That's with the Brantford Municipal Housing Corporation.
Right.
Because it is 100% owned by the city of Brantford, and those are Brantford assets. They weren't part of the CMSM. The merger down, we'd already owned them pre-2000.
Okay, thank you.
Answered? Yeah. Any further questions? Seeing none, I'll ask Kristen to call the vote.
All those in favor of item 5.4, governance review of the Brantford Brant Local Housing Corporation? Carried, thank you.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to item 6.2. Councillor Oakley, you separated this?
Yes, I just want to make comment on this, that it's, I feel like we've been having this conversation an awful lot, both at social services and more broadly in both of our councils, but it's immensely disappointing to see that this sort of jurisdictional finger pointing is going to jeopardize funding for our housing that is much needed. I find in both letters, I can't disagree with the federal minister that Ontario's housing plan is unambitious when we need ambition. And I can't disagree with Minister Calandra that it's just as important to maintain units, but it is disappointing to see that this is potentially going to jeopardize units that we need to build today. And while I know the federal government has indicated that it intends to bypass the provincial government and direct this funding to municipalities directly, I also know, unless things have changed since February, City of Brantford still hasn't heard back from their federal housing accelerator fund. County of Brant didn't apply for it, which in retrospect was likely a mistake, but nevertheless. So I have to say I'm a little skeptic that funding is going to come as soon as we need it, given that Brantford still has yet to hear back from their housing accelerator fund application. So I just want to comment that this is disappointing that, again, we're having these jurisdictional battles when ultimately we all just need to buckle down and get this housing built. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Any further comments on that item? Mayor Davis.
I agree with Councillor Oakley. Much of this is posturing. I think not by coincidence, probably shortly in advance of the federal election. But putting all that aside, Mary, is part of the confusion that in some provinces, I can think of, I think certainly BC, it's the province that builds RGI housing, the type of housing developments that we're doing here at the city and are done by municipalities across Ontario. That in other provinces, that's done by the province. Is that part of the problem? That so when the province says, when the feds say the province of Ontario is not building, but isn't it really the municipalities are doing the building, whereas in other provinces, yes, it's the province that's doing that. Is that part of the problem?
Yes, you're exactly right. Through Mr. Chair to the mayor, exactly right. We're one of the few we're the only province actually that this has been delegated down to the municipality level. Most other places, every other province and territory has responsibility for the province to build RGI and affordable housing.
Right. So when the federal minister says that Ontario is not meeting its housing targets, is that because they're not including in what's being built by municipalities and municipal nonprofit housing corporations?
Through the chair, I'm not sure exactly what the federal government is expecting from the province of Ontario. However, based on the communications that are in the report as well, it appears that the province of Ontario hasn't provided action plan items or report backs for the 3-year plan from 2022 to 2025 that satisfies the federal government recommendations or requirements. So because there's a lack of information from the province to the federal government, the funding has stopped for now.
So I would say, Mr. Chair, what I've said many other times, that if the goal of our country, our province and our city is to see us construct more housing generally, but also more housing for those most in need, which you achieve through RGI units, it would really be beneficial for the welfare of our country and our city and those most in need if the federal and provincial governments would provide municipalities in Ontario with predictable levels of funding for these kinds of developments so we can properly plan for them, and not only in terms of building, where we're going to build, but how we're going to finance and pay for them. And I find that really disappointing. I'm not blaming your other level of government, that the two federal and provincial governments where that money flows from can't get their acts together and provide us with that kind of predictability and stability that we need. If they gave that to us, provided that to us, I'm sure we'd even expand further the program that we have, and other municipalities would as well. So it's, shall I say, disappointing that they can't get that together in terms of a policy initiative. So.
Can't disagree with you, Mayor Davis. We did have MPP Brock. We have MP Brock here, and we had MPP Baumer here. I think we laid out our plans. Did we have any follow-up from either of them? Have you heard anything in your role in AMO that has come to give you any more confidence that things are changing?
Yes. We don't generally follow a policy of asking one another questions, but I think we're going to find out at this summer's AMO meeting in August. That's generally where the province will make these kinds of announcements for the benefit of municipalities that attend, and also obviously we and county representatives, we advocate and lobby on many of these same issues. So.
Sorry for breaking the rules, but I thought it was an appropriate question. Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you. So the province that says we want to build more housing is building more housing, but just not for the poor. And that's what we're hearing. The province says, and Ontario is the only province in the whole country that doesn't build social housing. Everybody else does. And the province, from what I'm reading here, hasn't provided the federal government with numbers to prove that they're actually building housing either through the municipalities or a consistent funding formula for municipalities to build the housing themselves. And I feel as a counselor and as a council that we're always going cap in hand to the province for money that the federal government's providing to them to give to us that isn't flowing. We know that's not happening. So, you know, is it a surprise that there's this disagreement? I mean, really what the request needs to be to the provincial government, get off your butts and start building social housing. Get back to where you should be, where everybody else is. I think it's an ideological position, quite frankly, that we're building housing, but not for the poor. And we need to change that. And I guess we can do that at AMO, loud and clear to the province that you need to either fund the housing, make it a clear path, as the mayor says. We need clear funding on a regular basis for both municipalities for us to build housing. And that's just not happening. We're doing a terrific job, quite frankly, to our staff for what we have and going cap in hand on a regular basis. So I applaud everybody for doing that. This is, federal government comes up with billions of dollars for affordable housing and it doesn't flow through Ontario to Brantford or Brant County. That's shameful. Thank you.
Councillor Carpenter, I'm going to break the rules again, sorry. Is it appropriate for us to make a recommendation, a change to this recommendation that says just what you said? So rather than just send them this letter, actually make a more bold statement about the need for consistent funding and support?
I'd be happy to move that recommendation, that amendment.
Would you like to just formulate it for the record?
That we inform our MP and our MPP that Brantford and Brant County Social Service Committee would request that we get consistent, affordable funding for affordable housing. And it can be wordsmith if the CAO deems appropriate.
Yeah, I'm looking to staff. I presume that staff will prepare a letter that will come from, I think ideally the two mayors, to say just what Councillor Carpenter has articulated. Now, just on the recommendation, if I may, you use you've got one of our MPPs there. We do actually have two other MPPs that represent parts of the county, and I think if we're going to make an approach to provincial government, then we should include both those other two MPPs, MPP Hardiman and Riddell. Any other questions? Any other comments? Seeing none, and I'll ask Kristen to call the vote on the amended motion. There was a seconder, Councillor Samuel.
All those in favor of the amendment to item 6.2? That carried, thank you.
Then we can call the vote on the motion as amended. Is that a question, Councillor Carpenter, or you're voting? You're voting.
All those in favor? Thank you, carried.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of that part of the agenda. There are no resolutions. There are no notices of motion. So I'm going to declare the meeting of the Social Services Committee adjourned, and we're going to now proceed to the Brant and Brantford Local Housing Corporation of Directors meeting. Thank you. This is now the meeting of the Brant and Brantford Local Housing Corporation Board of Directors. And it's Wednesday, April the 10th, 2024. The roll call has been taken. We are missing a number of members. Kristen, who are we missing? Councillor Garneau is missing, Councillor Howes is missing, and I can't see Mayor Bailey on my screen. Okay. Are there any declarations of conflicts of interest for any of the items appearing on the Brant and Brantford Local Housing Corporation Board of Directors agenda? Seeing none, if you have them, do declare them later. There are no presentations or delegations for today's meeting. Can I please get a mover and seconder to place all items for consideration consent on the floor? Councillor Martin, Councillor Samuel. Are there any items the committee wishes to be separated for discussion purposes? Mayor Davies?
5.1.
5.1. Kristen, can we then please call the vote on all items not separated, reading the titles that are subject to the vote?
The subjects that are entitled to the vote are 5.2, the minutes from December 6, 2023. All those in favor? Thank you. That's carried.
Thank you. So we'll now consider items that were separated, and that's 5.1, and I'll hand back to Mayor Davies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff. I want to commend staff that when you read this report, you'll see that many of the units that are managed through this nonprofit housing corporation are not considered to be supportive housing, and supportive housing is where you have on-site services provided for residents. Might be substance abuse, might be mental health, medical issues, life skills. But I want to commend staff that in many of the developments that we have in the portfolio of this corporation, they are providing services. It's not fully supportive housing. I call it kind of, I don't know what the right term is, but I commend staff for taking the initiative to do this, to help the residents and help them live more productive, healthier lives. And I commend you for doing that and continue doing it. The other question I have has to do with the financial statement, and the rental arrears record seems to be creeping up. Is that a long-term trend, or is that just a blip from over the last 6 to 7 months? What does the analysis tell us?
Good morning, Donna Kirschnoff, Manager of Housing Operations. What we're seeing is the trend is moving upwards for two reasons. One is because of the backlog that we have with the Landlord and Tenant Board. To get our hearings, we're waiting, even though the provincial government had committed to increasing the wait time for our hearings are still 8 months out, but we're learning more, we're learning upfront. We have a date for a hearing, but it's still 8 months out. In the past, we'd have to wait 6 months for a hearing. Now we wait 2 months, but it's still a hearing date, which is 8 months out. During this time, this is where we see some of the arrears accumulate. Tenants will be waiting for a hearing to be able to come up with, a judgment, whatever that's going to be. In the meantime, because we do have a very robust eviction prevention policy, our goal is to ensure that our tenants, these tenancies are saved, that they are sustainable. And in the meantime, the arrears are building up. And once we do get a hearing, once we do have an agreement, whether it be an order or mediated, we have tenants that have arrears and we have arrear agreements. So what we have here is not everybody is not paying rent. What we have is an accumulation of arrears where we have repayment agreements. And to be truthful, some of these repayment agreements are for years. In the past, we would want a repayment agreement which we had all arrears paid in 6 months. This is not sustainable. So we do have agreements with tenants where they can pay their regular rent plus arrears owing on top of that.
Is there an underlying cause to it all? I understand we have the administrative issues and with the landlord and tenant tribunal. Is there anything else going on here? Any other factors?
Through the chair, I would not think that there's no cause, there's no underlying cause. I think that it is, the annual review process. In the past, we were able to get to a hearing in a quicker turnaround time, 6 weeks maximum. Now it's 8 months. The staff are working with our tenants to ensure that they get the paperwork in. That's another reason for the increased arrears is when a household doesn't hand in their annual review paperwork, they will go up to market. So then when we do eventually get all of their paperwork in, we will go back and retroactively reinstate their subsidy. So it's fluid, some months we will have tenants where they're in arrears because of paperwork, and then they're paid up. And then we reinstate the subsidy, and then we have another set of tenants that are doing something similar.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Why are the people that are in arrears not put on mandatory pay direct?
Through the chair, that's not permissible.
Why not?
Through
Through the chair, pay directs only work for folks who are in receipt of social assistance, whether it's Ontario Works or the Ontario Disability Support Plan. Under OW and ODSP legislation, which is mandated by the province, there's very strict regulations on when a pay direct can be imparted. So staff will work with the local Ontario Works or ODSP office whenever possible to try and put a pay direct in place to help pay down arrears. But a lot of families who are in RGI units might not be in receipt of social assistance, so they might be receiving income from other benefits such as CPP or EI. So we cannot put pay directs on those income sources.
Okay, do we have all the ones that we can put on pay direct?
Through the chair, that's a discussion between the family and their ODSP or OW caseworker. Households can refuse to have a pay direct put on their file, and then we would proceed through the landlord tenant board if they continue to accrue arrears.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you. The answer to this is probably yes, but do we work with our residents in these units to make sure that they're capturing all the subsidies that they can get, provincial and federal subsidies, the different grants and checks? We make sure that they're maximizing their income that they're able to under current legislation?
Through the chair, that's a great question. Yes, we do have staff who work very closely with households who are facing concerns with their arrears. Since the Housing Stability Worker Program has come into effect, tenants are referred to the HSW program. And that is one of the first things that they explore, is to see that they're receiving all benefit income that they're entitled to, helping make connections to community tax clinics to make sure that their taxes are filed so that they are receiving as much benefits as possible.
And that includes the heat rebate and all the other different rebates that are available that a lot of seniors aren't aware that they're available, but they are, and we make them aware of it.
Through the chair, yes, absolutely.
Thank you. I thought we did. I just wanted to make sure we clarified that.
Any further questions? Seeing none, then we'll call the vote.
All those in favor of item 5.1, fourth quarter report? Carried, thank you.
There are no resolutions. There are no notices of motion. The meeting of the Brantford and Brant Local Housing Corporation Board of Directors is now adjourned. We will now proceed to the Brantford Municipal Non-Profit Housing Corporation Board of Directors meeting. Brant councillors may be excused if they wish. Thank you. Thanks to staff.
All right, good morning. Welcome everyone to the Brantford Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation Board of Directors meeting for April 10th, 2024. The roll call has been taken. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest for any of the members for anything on the agenda today? Seeing none, there are no presentations or delegations for today's meeting. Can I get a mover and a seconder to place all of the items for consideration and consent on the floor? So Councillor Martin and Mayor Davis. All right. And are there any items that the committee would like separated for discussion purposes? All right, seeing none, we'll call the vote. Councillor Secoli, are you voting or do you have a question?
Okay, so
I jumped the gun on voting, sorry.
The items subject to the vote are 5.1, the fourth quarter report, and 5.2, the minutes from February 7th, 2024. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you.
All right, so with that, there are no resolutions. There are notices of motion, no notices of motion. So the meeting of the Brantford Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation of Board of Directors is now adjourned. Thank you, everyone.